This is 399 BC. Athens, democracy is in panic mode. They have the wisest man in the world on trial for corrupting the minds of youth, for asking so many questions. They vote, they find him guilty, they execute Socrates. But his very best student stares into a grove of olive trees to decide how he can fix this crash. At the same time, a very powerful young prince is held hostage in Thebes. These are two architects. It's Plato, building a classroom, and Philip II, the Macedonian, who is building a killing machine. And both are on a collision course to try to fix this crash. But it may destroy the Greek city-state forever. I'm Mr. Hull, and this is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom for your journey. This is lesson number 37, The Architect of Power. You'll need your history notebooks today to track all of the philosophy and all of the warfare. And it really matters because first, Plato is inventing the academy. The grove of olive trees he's staring at will be the first university or the school that is invented, and he has wisdom. He is the successor to Socrates, who was designated by Delphi as the wisest man in the world. And this is the lesson to learn for the basics about Plato, his enduring wisdom, at a time when Greece is shattered. They're in a crash, but the classical wisdom is going to survive. This is the lesson of the years 387 BC all the way to 338 BC. And it's going to include Philip II. He's having a real rise to success, and he's going to use Greek wisdom. So how will the Greek wisdom survive if it's in the hands of a barbarian king, Philip II, using Greek strategy against him? It's a fracture in the Hellenic soul. Hellenic, that's the Greece. Hellas means Greeks, but it's not a country. It's a cultural identity. And by the end of this episode, you will level up as a classical scholar. You will see this classical identity with the wisdom and with the vision of these two architects of power. I've visited these jail cells where Socrates was held before his trial. It's right at the base of the Phalanx where the assembly would meet, kind of across from the Acropolis. And while we're standing there, we're going to quote some of the Socratic wisdom. Socrates quotes like, know yourself, know thyself. That is the number one inscription at Delphi. Delphi declared that he is the wisest man in the world. Delphi is a city-state, it's an oracle, it's a location for understanding, the center of understanding. It is the highest level of understanding. So they loved Socrates. He says, know yourself. And that kind of wisdom, right? You should know yourself. And the second, you can't do anything without understanding yourself. The second quote is nothing in excess, everything in moderation. These are two wise quotes that Delphi features, and apply it right now. Know yourself, nothing in excess, everything in moderation. And what happens if you see these colors, the excitement of these flavors coming together? Should you open this bag of chips? If you know yourself, you might know you could eat the whole bag of chips. But if you listen to the wisdom of nothing in excess, maybe you don't open the bag of chips. Bad habits, determination for health. Maybe it's a goal that you have, hardworking. There is so much more to Socratic wisdom. I'll give you one more of my favorite quotes that I would bring up in the classroom. Socrates said that envy is the ulcer of the soul. Envy will burn your stomach. The ulcer of the soul, it will burn your soul. Envy. It's very powerful for students to think, because when I'm teaching kids, I'm looking around the room, they're competing who's got the best outfits, who's got the best phone, who has the best hair. And the one that'll make you crazy, athletics, who has the best sports abilities, right? Know yourself. And envy is the ulcer of the soul. Are you envious of the tall kids, but you love basketball? In fact, I'm thinking of a really great student I had who was not tall at all, but he loved basketball. He worked harder than anybody. It's an inspiration to see that. And now, fast forward, he's never been taller than 5'7", but he is a college basketball coach. It's like Socrates is a good coach for the coaches because he would understand if you're a short basketball player, you're going to have some challenges and you're going to need to work very hard. And envy is the ulcer of the soul. It will burn you from the inside. Well, Socrates is so much more than one-liners. And we'll get to the Socratic method in a little bit. But the city of Athens has just forced Socrates to drink a cup of hemlock. Execution. How would you react if you watched your government majority murder your mentor? The tyranny of the majority, the mob. Is this a problem today? So how is Plato going to help us through this? This is a mess. This is a crash. The mob, the tyranny of the majority, they voted to execute. Plato, his number one student, is traumatized. He realizes that the mob can't be trusted with power. Plato flees the city. He leaves. He doesn't just go to the suburbs and find a nice grove of olive trees. We can get to that later because that does sound good. Maybe he'll find something there, but he leaves the country. He left the entire concept of democracy and the city-states. It's what we've been learning about for so long, about Greek independence, the city-states, how they are like many countries, constantly struggling and inventing and being innovative. But Plato is going to spend the next decade exploring and learning from other places, kind of looking for a way to rebuild the software, fix the crash of the human mind. So he heads down the road first to Megara. When I taught Greek city-states, the kids were sitting in these different city-state groups. They were fighting with each other. They were having battles and competitions. And they all had a different development and style and spirit, kind of like sports teams. And we're going to lose that in the course of these next few lessons. Plato stops at Megara. He studies logic with the philosopher named Euclid. And then he heads on, after Megara, he heads on to Syracuse, which is in Italy. We have Greek city-states in southern Italy. They are colonies. The Greek wisdom has been spreading all over the world. Athens has crashed, but something is enduring. The Pythagoreans are in Syracuse. Pythagoreans, have you heard of Pythagoras, the Pythagorean theorem? He meets with a statesman, a famous leader of the city, and talks about how this statesman is ruling a city with scientific precision because of the influence of Pythagoreans. Pythagoreans, what is a Pythagorean? They are followers of Pythagoras. They have beliefs. It's almost like a religion or a cult, a culture. And the right triangle guy. Have you heard of the Pythagorean theorem about what the right triangle will always do for you? If you square the legs, it will always give you the sum of those squares will always give you the square of the hypotenuse. Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. But that's just one of the many mathematical truths in creation. And the Pythagoreans loved to consider the impact and how this statesman is running a city better because he is following the truth of the scientific precision that we see. So from there, Plato learns that the cosmos isn't ruled by the mob. The cosmos, that's the Greek word. What is the cosmos? For understanding, the universe, the way things work, the way things are. And the mob is not running the cosmos. In fact, not even close to people debating and voting on whether a triangle should act the way it does. It always acts the same way. And it's in harmony with everything else in the cosmos, the harmony of mathematics. Plato continues to find wisdom. Does this sound wise to you already? He travels to Egypt, to the ancient Heliopolis city of the sun, and talks to a priest who then starts to lecture him. This haunting message tells Plato, "O Solon, Solon, you Hellenes, you Greeks, are never anything but children. There is not an old man among you. Not an old man among you." So let's think. This kind of slam, this kind of lecture he's giving Plato, it is true. The priest was right. What's he saying? These young kids keep crashing. The software is too new. All the time, new software because of your democracy, your freedom, you have a high churn. And what does Egypt do? Egypt has a pharaoh. And it's very old, dynasties of pharaohs. And so he explains the volatility of Greece, the constant crash and reboot of Greece, while Egypt has the stability of thousands of years. Well, what do you think? What is your first response to that as you think? Do you value one powerful, stable king like Pharaoh? What's the cost of that? How would you blend freedom and a free society and innovation and invention and wisdom and democracy, the self-rule? Do you have ideas or comments at this point? Because Plato's going to come back. He's going to start this school and we're going to learn from him. So this would be a time, if you have a comment or click the like button about freedom, or do you want a pharaoh? Plato is realizing that Athens was acting like a child and it lacked the deep structural roots. Oh, Plato needs to go back and now build on the wisdom that he's been collecting from Egypt, from Syracuse, from all over in his travels. 387 BC, he's back in Athens. Plato does not run for office. He doesn't join the assembly and debate. He goes and he buys a nice grove of olive trees. In the northwest suburbs, it's called Academus. This is a land that was actually sacred to a local hero named Hecademos, spelled Hecademos. But this is where we get the word academy. This is where he founded the academy, the world's first school, the first university. And it's not a place to just get a degree and get a job. This is classical education, the beginning of a real classical approach that we're seeking wisdom here. Well, think of it this way. They viewed this as a religious place, that it was dedicated to the 9 muses, the 9 goddesses who are in charge of arts and sciences. It's like a religious guild, like another cult, kind of like the Pythagoreans, because they're seeing something very special here. It's a shrine to the muses, and it's called a museon. Does that word sound familiar? Like, this is where we get the word museum. So the academy is more than a classroom. It's like the first museum of the human mind, a place to preserve wisdom, like a precious artifact in a museum. And above the entrances, Plato says, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here." It's like everyone needs to come with a certain knowledge of what's in the scroll of the wisdom. But why geometry? Why is geometry required to enter a school about philosophy? Well, I already mentioned about the Pythagorean theorem, which is kind of represented here. Some of the truths about a right triangle. And then there's way more. Like, geometry is great. If you had a good geometry class, or if you're going to, it is fun. So what is the connection with geometry? Why is Plato wanting his students to come with these concepts of what a triangle does? Triangles are perfect. They can't be changed. You can't alter these rules. They're eternal. Plato wanted his students to value the truth, the eternal truths that are there, and he's going to call them forms. Forms over just temporary instances. There's truth to the form. And this will start to make you a Plato expert. I mean, I'm just giving you this tiny little bit, but you'll know where to go for more. So inside the walls of this academy, the grove, the concept of the school, they practiced the Socratic method. What is the Socratic method? By practicing this, you're going to ask a lot of questions. Oh yeah, Socrates was questioning so much that he corrupted the minds of youth. And this is how he could do it. Maybe with the Socratic method. Because it's not about teaching facts exactly. It's about debugging the brain. Socrates would ask a general to define courage, or a short basketball player to define determination. Okay, well, that doesn't seem very hard. What is courage? What is determination? But in the process, he's going to keep asking follow-up questions until your definition contradicts itself. And if you contradict your own understanding, it's like you crash, you collapse, and that's the goal. The goal is to reach the state where your brain has been flushed out. You don't know what determination is. You don't know what courage is. Aporia, the Greek word aporia. This Greek word aporia means it's a productive confusion. How would that be wise, to kind of be flushed out of your understanding of determination? Because then you go back and you build it. In that moment, you realize you know nothing at all. What you thought you knew is confused, it's a mess, and your mind could be actually clear enough to love searching for the truth, to love wisdom, the searching for truth. You know, Socrates had that famous quote, another one-liner, "I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing." Or sometimes you hear it, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." So that'll hurt your brain, because if you know that, you don't know nothing. You know the one thing, that you know nothing, and it's paradoxical, but that's wisdom. The love of wisdom, pursue her. Her name is Sophia, by the way. Did you know that the girl's name Sophia is this type of wisdom, and philo means love, philosopher, philosophia is the love of wisdom. And do you love this process? Let me give you a specific example that Plato uses in a writing in the dialogues about Socrates, when he talks to these two generals, Nicias and Laches. He asks these two generals to define courage. And General Laches says, well, courage is standing your ground. Would you have said this? Stand your ground, don't run away. Is that, would you agree that that's courage? And so, sounds good. But Socrates dismantles it, because he gives a couple examples. He says, well, what about the Scythian cavalry? You know, they fight while they're retreating. They fight. These are on horses. Are they not brave? It's part of their strategy. And then he also talks about battling the Persians at the Battle of Plataea. The Spartans faked a retreat. They faked to run away. Are they not courageous? Like, they were springing a trap, and it worked. Okay, so now these generals, are they confused? Have they hit aporia yet? they actually get stumped. Like they kind of don't know what to do. They don't become philosophers. They are stuck in their old definition of standing still, standing their ground, to be courageous, to just stay there. And they're inflexible. So Socrates is trying to teach them that courage requires wisdom and flexibility. File that away, by the way, because we're going to have another instance of courage and retreat combined. But do you see what's happening here? If you're inflexible, you're not wise. If you seek the truth in all the different ways, it might be easier to seek it from the point of aporia. When you flushed out your previous understandings, you're kind of blank, and then you build an understanding of courage. So Plato is now the successor of Socrates. And Plato is building his academy and training the love of wisdom. It's difficult to be wise. It takes determination. It's going to take work. And one of my favorites, like you could spend a lot of work trying to unpack the allegory of the cave. In Plato's Republic, Book 7, Plato tells us about a cave. It's the allegory of the cave. What even is an allegory? An allegory is a story. It's a parable. It's a picture. And it's used to reveal a hidden meaning, a moral to the lesson. An allegory of a cave where the light is coming through and hitting the wall of the cave. And just in front of that wall are prisoners who are chained and they're stuck there. In fact, they've only ever been there. That's all they know. And so with that light on the wall, sometimes an image of a bird, like the shape of a bird, will go as a shadow across that light. And sometimes a cat, an image of a cat, a shape will go across, because there's actually people in charge of holding up cutouts of a bird or a cat. And this is the only thing these chained prisoners have ever known. And so what do you do? How do you react to seeing a bird and a cat? In fact, what if the cat chases the bird? How would you react to that? It's the only thing you ever know. Is it real? And the people that are holding up these shapes are in charge, and they can decide if they want to make you excited about the suspense of the cat chasing the bird, or maybe they want to make you upset and the cat actually catches the bird. And then you're sad because there is no more bird. Plato wants you to put yourself in each of these different characters. Now we're going to change one of the characters. One of the prisoners is going to be unchained and released. He's going to get to walk up and out towards the lights. Now his eyes are really messed up because he's been in this dark cave for a while. He's not used to focusing on anything other than the wall. And as his eyes kind of clear up and he's walking towards the light, the bright, bright sun, he can barely deal with it. And as his eyes adjust, the sun. And what do you think the sun represents? Truth. The light. The sun represents truth. Now, this one prisoner who's been freed, he is a philosopher. That's what Plato wanted you to think that. Maybe you already figured that out, because he's seeing the light, he's seeing the truth, and he wants to go back and explain it to free the other people too. He wants to be able to tell them what is really going on. It's not really a bird. It's not really a cat. So when this unchained philosopher goes back to try to explain this to the other prisoners, they don't believe him. They don't thank him. He wants to free them. He wants to help them. It's like, get away. Like, they actually get angry at him, because when he is telling them the truth, he is ruining what they've always understood, what they always believe. They threaten to kill him. Is this what they did to Socrates? Is this what they did in recent times about a certain story or a certain leader or a certain understanding that we've all had? is this wise? This allegory of the cave has withstood the test of time. It is tried and true. It's a lesson, and you can spend a lot of time unpacking it in Plato's Republic, but we don't have a lot of time here. The Academy will use allegories like this to try to develop you, a student, into a philosopher king. And Plato is concerned about the mob. Maybe he's concerned with the people that are holding up the cat and the bird. And why are they doing that, by the way? You had to have wondered, what is their intent? Who gave them that authority? And the problem with the mob. Philosopher kings is what Plato wants out of people. He wants people to be lovers of wisdom. Did he know he was going to impact the world so much? But while Plato was in the grove of Academus dreaming about the perfect state, the republic, the philosopher king, remember we mentioned about there's a 15-year-old prince hostage in Thebes close by. And he's picking up some of these same wisdom lessons, actually, but he's applying them differently because he actually won't be stuck in the past. We're talking about Philip II. So thank you, Plato, for establishing this academy. We know that Aristotle will be coming from it. We know that the Socratic method is safe with him. But let's move north and let's talk about Philip II. Philip II is 15 years old. He's a Macedonian prince and he's a hostage. Why? Well, they did this. He's a diplomatic hostage. This is to keep an alliance between Thebes and Macedonia. So with Philip there, he's not in a dungeon. He's actually staying in the house of a great general. And he's able to see the training. He's able to see Thebes. So he's not a prisoner. And he sees the machine. You know that Thebes will be the tough guy that defeats Sparta in 371 BC. So, yeah, Thebes is good. Philip is like a cultural sponge here. He's kind of amazed. You know that Macedonia is on the outside. It's, you call him a barbarian because he's on the outside. They're technically not Greeks. But as Philip saw this Greek culture, saw the Greek scroll and software, and watched Theban generals as they trained and as they drilled, he saw the Greek way of fighting, and it's good, but it's also now old. It's not getting innovated and fixed up. They've lacked their flexibility, right? When he returns to Macedonia in 364 BC, and then takes the throne in 359 BC, what has he done differently? He's got his own problems with politics, and Macedonia is not that impressive. Thebes is the top dog right now. But so here's Philip with his idea of a big hardware upgrade, more concerned about a military machine. He takes uneducated shepherds from Macedonia and he starts training them. Not like Plato, but with weapons, with strategy, with following orders. He's making a military machine. He's actually going to innovate the weapon. So the sarissa is the new weapon that Philip realizes, okay, so this is a massive pike. It's made of very tough Cornell wood. It's 16, 17, 18 feet long. That is a long reach from behind a wall of shields, a phalanx of shields. So compared to the previous kind of spear thing, the Greek dory, which was 7 or 9 feet long, and they had that phalanx formation, overlapping shields. But the Macedonian soldier is what? Like double, more than double the distance with that pike. Now, how are you going to carry this thing? He had to also innovate the size of the shield. Instead of basically 36 inches, we're going to drop it down to 24 and actually kind of attach it. So this new phalanx formation is deadly. It is a machine. It is a wall of pointy things, right? You've seen these pictures before. So these really long sarissas. And we're going to put the men in blocks, 200 256 men. We're going to have 16 rows deep, ranks. 16 ranks deep. So it's like a hedgehog, an impenetrable hedgehog with iron points on the end. And you've still got 11 more rows of guys in the back, and their pikes are held up at a different angle just to deflect arrows. So this is not a militia sneaking around. This is now like a new, literally it's like a machine of war. And there's a little bit of dark irony here, but this machine is going to cause panic with the intellectuals of Athens. The political leaders of Athens, like one guy named Socrates, writes a letter to Philip in 346 BC, and he told Philip, "You are the one we've been waiting for." It's like, he's not a philosopher king. Plato would not approve of that. But Philip wanted to be the supreme leader. He wanted to unite all the Greeks. He wanted to go across the sea and attack Persia. And, given the crash and the problem we've been in, maybe you're sitting there thinking, yeah, this is not a bad idea. Philip just recently established the city of Philippi for himself, named after himself in that strategic location. Philippi will be famous later on. I'll bring it up in future lessons, but he is becoming godlike. With cities named after him, Philip is portraying himself as a godlike ruler that will fix the crash, the problems. But not everybody's buying it. How about the famous Demosthenes, the Athenian philosopher? He practiced giving his speeches. He knew he had to speak well. He put pebbles in his mouth and tried to practice during the loud crashing waves of the seashore. And Demosthenes is calling out, giving speeches against Philip and people that, like the Athenians, like a Socrates, who wants to be with Philip. They want Philip to come in there and fix Athens and be the leader. And Demosthenes saying, don't do it. Demosthenes called Philip a pestilent scoundrel from Macedonia, where you can't even buy a decent slave. That's such a slam. But he's using rhetoric. He's trying to convince Athens people like Socrates, stop siding with Philip II. He does not have the best interests of Athens in mind as he's marching south with this military machine. He's going to ruin us. He's going to do away with the Greek city-state. He's going to cause a different type of crash. So who do you think is going to really win this debate, win this argument? We have the showdown battle coming in 338 BC. The showdown battle is at Chaeronea. It's a hot August day in 338 BC. And the scroll, the software of the academy, and the upgraded hardware of Philip's Phalanx, Plato versus Philip. Who is the architect of power? What's going to happen next? On one side, you have the Greek alliance. They have 35,000 men. The Athenians have the left wing. The Thebans have the right wing. And anchoring that Theban line right next to the river was the sacred band, the elite fighters. But on the other side, Philip is commanding his Macedonian army, 30,000 infantry, 2,000 cavalry. Philip took the right wing facing the Athenians, and on the left wing facing the sacred band, he sent his 18-year-old son, Alexander. We'll talk more about Alexander in the next lesson. How did he get to this position of importance and wisdom? Alexander was leading this companion cavalry, the finest horsemen in the entire world, and it's a tactical masterpiece. He actually used Socratic irony on the battlefield because standing your ground, is that the only definition of courage? As the battle began, the Athenian hoplites charged with their old school grit. Philip did not meet them head on. Instead, he ordered his phalanx to retreat. But that's not a rout. It was a disciplined backward march, step by step, with the pikes forward. The Athenians saw that the Macedonians moving down. They thought that they were winning, and they started shouting, "On to Macedonia!" So they broke their formation. They broke their lines to chase. This whole thing is about the lines. Got to be strong in a phalanx. These guys are chasing the dream, chasing the mirage. And so as they're pulling away from their allies, opening up a massive gap in the center of the Greek line, Philip waited until the Athenians were fully extended, disorganized. And he reportedly said, the Athenians do not know how to win. He planted his feet. The phalanx stopped their retreat, which was fake. It was a trap. And then they started to surge forward. The wall of Sarissa crashed into this disorganized Athenian mob, and it was a slaughter. On the other side of the field, tragedy was even deeper. While Philip is crushing the Athenians, Alexander saw that gap open up, and with this companion cavalry in a charge against the 300 elite fighters, these men were courageous from the old definition. They stayed true to the ideal state of loyalty. They stood their ground like they had been taught, but they were in an anvil. They were getting anviled, hammered by the cavalry. And that is the end of the Greek city-state, because Thebes falls. And you know that centuries later, they have the Lion of Chaeronea as a tribute to those elite fighters. They believe they found the skeletons where they were all buried here. The ideal state versus the military state, the philosophy, the scroll, the software. What is the enduring legacy with the Greek city-state now downgraded from what it used to be? But don't they have Philip as the strong leader? Aren't things going to be okay? He didn't burn Athens down. Philip is now the master of Greece. Philip needed their navy, by the way. He garrisoned Thebes, dissolved their power. By 337 BC, Philip II called all the Greek city-states to Corinth, and he forms the new league, the League of Corinth. He is the supreme leader, the supreme commander. Are we all back together again? He is the philosopher king now. He was using wisdom. And when you find out more about the way he's educated his son, you'll be impressed with the wisdom. 336 BC. But power is a dangerous drug. In 336 BC, 2 years after this battle, you know that Philip hosted a massive wedding celebration, and he wanted to show the world glory, kleos, Greek glory, the kleos glory. And so during the procession, he sent out statues of the 12 Olympian gods, and guess what? Number 13 was a statue of himself enthroned amongst the gods. Making yourself a god, making the city of Philippi named after yourself. Is this hubris? Socrates had told him, hey, you could be a god, Philip. Philip believed him. But it's not going to end well. For him, anyway. Story we will get to in another lesson. But you have seen these two architects of power. Which one do you like better? What is the lesson for us? We saw Plato try to save Athens and really save the world by saying, chase after Sophia. Be a lover of wisdom. Love the truth. So in this lesson, Athens was trying to fix its soul with Plato's academy. But the professional army of the Macedonians crushed the Greeks and ended the city-state idea in 338 BC. True strength requires the balance of a wise mind and a strong defense. So thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history, some classical truth for your journey. Because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.